Good morning, everyone. How's everybody today? Is that a good? Yes, you're good? All right. My name is Stephen. I'm from the CFDA, and I wanted to welcome you this morning to the third part of a three-part series that CFDA and Theory have been hosting. Wendy and I were just reminiscing. The first one was on linen. The second one was on carbon in the supply chain. And then today we're going to be talking about wool. Who has been to all three now? Raise your hand. There you go. Gold stars for all of you. You can actually take the leftover pastries home with you as a thank you. But for us at CFDA, sustainability circularity is a core pillar of our work. When we look at what we've been doing, we've really been in the space for over a decade. And I believe in New York, in American fashion, we've been leading globally and have really put more focus and programming around it, I think, than some of our counterparts in other fashion capitals. And we can only do that with partners like Theory. And when Sarah, my colleague, and I met with Wendy about a year ago, we were just so impressed with her focus and dedication and her knowledge and relationships. As you'll meet this morning, some of the people she works with, we knew we wanted to do something. And for Wendy and Theory, what I admire so much about them is when someone's doing good work, it's easy to kind of have a party or something splashy and make it all about that, but that's not the approach Wendy and Theory wanted. They wanted something very meaningful, something more intimate, something that actually allowed them to share that knowledge with all of you. So I personally appreciate that. And I hope that you get something out of this morning, and I hope even more that we can have more conversations in the future. So thank you, Stephanie, Wendy, Sasha, Elizabeth, Sarah, everyone from the teams that have worked on this, and enjoy the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was really nice, I have to say. This is really important to us at Theory, and I'm hoping that you're going to enjoy this panel also. It's about unwinding wool. So it's about talking about the wool and the wool supply chain. But before we get into the panel, I'm going to introduce a video to you all. And this is a video of a farmer in Australia. And when I was in Australia in February, March, I had the opportunity to visit him and his wife and the land and the sheep. I love visiting the sheep. They're so adorable. And I have to say, I asked him one question. I asked him a lot of questions, but one was, what do you want, our customer or us to know? And he said, and he had a lot of things to say. One was about passion, but I'm going to not tell you what he said. I'm going to have him tell you. I asked him to give us a video. He could not be here because it is a very busy time for them. But so I'd like to introduce you to Michael and Angela Field. They are the farmers that supply the fiber to Silvio Botto, who you'll be meeting soon, and is actually made into the sweater that I'm wearing. But now we can actually play the video.
Hello, my name's Michael Field.
And I'm Angela Field. Together we run TA Field Estates. It's been in Michael's family for over 117 years, and Michael's the fourth generation running the company. We're passionate about the wool industry. It's an absolutely amazing product. It has so many vast and varied qualities, from the breathability, the insulation properties, fire retardant, and such a natural product which is 100% carbon neutral. We are hoping that other people will become as passionate as we do, and we're very pleased to have the relationship we have with Botto Giuseppe.
We're one of Australia's largest wool growers and have been for well over 80 years. We supply wool to Botto Giuseppe, who in turn supply wool to Theory. This is one of our fleeces. It is magical stuff. It is beautiful. You get to love it. You get to love your sheep. You get to love the whole industry, how it comes around. So the wool we supply to Botto Giuseppe comes from two of our properties. One being Congai up in the New England tablelands of northern New South Wales, and the other one, Benanga at Jugiong, where we live in southern New South Wales. We would supply Botto Giuseppe mostly 15 to 16 micron wool, and Botto Giuseppe come to visit us about once a year thereabouts. And this year, fortunately, in March, Theory were able to come out and visit us as well. So we felt really privileged to showcase what we do to them, and then they can showcase that to the world, being yourselves as such.
The relationship we have with Botto Giuseppe has been going on for about 9 years. And we're both old, established family companies, so it's really lovely to have that link between us. We've both got very similar principles where we want to look after, our staff, for us, our stock or our sheep, and our land or country. And it's very, very important that we do this, because if we don't, then we actually don't have an industry to work with. We have to look after our land, we have to look after our sheep to be able to enable us to produce this amazing product.
For us, it's a real buzz knowing where our wool ends up. Most other growers don't know it's sold through the auction system. We're so fortunate to have such a direct link with Botto Giuseppe and Theory. So we're very, very privileged and been very lucky to be in that sort of position where we produce enough quality and quantity of what they do. How do we do what we do? We take samples from every sheep as it's shorn. We get a fibre diameter test and a fleece weight from it. So therefore we know what every animal's producing, and then we can market that wool in a bale, in lines of wool, which then suits Botto Giuseppe to suit their clients further down the track. So as I continue to say, we're very, very lucky how we do it. And we use as much science as we possibly can. We DNA test our rams, which are going into the flock. So we use as much science as we can to help us achieve our objectives.
And to enable us to be more sustainable, looking for the future, which is really important to us, and also people like Botto Giuseppe, where we really want to look after things because we want to hand it on, hopefully, to the next generation. Our 3 children, they would be the 5th generation following on from the company, and we're very passionate about keeping it sustainable for the future.
It's really important to us, and I say at Congai and Benangaroo, we have our responsible wool standard accreditation, and it's one of Botto Giuseppe's main requirements we do that. So we are doing whatever we can to help our customers, being Botto Giuseppe, and the wool industry and the fashion industry right the way through the supply chain where we can.
We hope, from Michael and I, that you will be as passionate about wool as we are, and hopefully we might see you here in Australia in the future.
Thank you very much for your time, and good luck.
Adieu. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I know, it's their passion that I was just so taken by, and how important everything it is that they do. And we're going to have a lot more of that conversation right now. So I'd like to hand it off to Sophia Li, who's going to moderate this wonderful panel we have. Sophia.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Good, yes, we're good. I know you're excited about those pastries you can take home later. So before we get started, we're talking about something that isn't often talked a lot about in the fashion industry, which is why I so respect what Wendy and Theory is doing. So in order to get us in our utmost presence, I'm gonna lead us through some 3 breaths, and then we'll get into the panel. So I invite you to close your eyes and just uncross your legs and just get really rooted into your chair. Feel just your booty sink into your chair, and take a deep inhale through your nose here and have it expand into your stomach, your chest area. Hold it at the top and let it out with a deep sigh out of your mouth. Here we go. Another deep inhale through your nose, expand through your stomach, expand through your chest. Hold it at the very top. Let it out with a deeper sigh. I want to hear it. Yes, there we go. And last deep inhale through your nose, expand your stomach, expand your chest, hold it at the top, sip in some air through your mouth, hold it at the top here, and let out the biggest sigh out today. Here we go. Amazing. You could join me now. Thank you. I did it for Silvio because he told me he was jet lagged this morning a little bit. So my name is Sophia. I'm so honored to moderate this panel. So welcome to, this is Unwinding Wool, a journey through the wool supply chain from farm to closet. We have Silvio, he is the CEO of Botto Giuseppe. You saw him being named and called out in the video many times. I was like, oh, it's like you're a famous person. We have we have Jeanne Carver. She's the founder and president of Shanico Wool Company. And of course, we have Wendy, who's the SVP of Sustainability at Theory. So I think it's interesting that the fashion industry right now, annually, we use about 1.5 million tons of wool, which is a lot. But it's also something that is a natural fiber, is biodegradable, is carbon neutral, as we saw, and not only protects our animals in a safe way, but protects our land from desertification. So I wanted to ask each of our panelists to start off. Silvio, we'll start with you. Please introduce yourself a little bit more, and how has your connection to land evolved since starting this work?
Hello, thank you for having me at this panel. I'm Silvio Botto, I'm the managing director of Botto Giuseppe. Botto Giuseppe is a company in Biella that is located in Italy, and we produce fabrics and yarns for the upper part of the market, mainly using natural fiber like wool, cashmere, and silk. So we have two production plants that are located, one in Biella, the other in Tarcento, that is near Venice, and we employ around 350 people. So talking about the situation of how changing those years, since I start to work, I can think about a lot of improvement from the environment side. Because Biella, I remember when I started in the first year in the 91, it was not Biella generally, but all the production. Everybody was free to leave their wastage on the river, on the farm. You can see every morning the river changing color depending on the last dyeing lot that was made at the time. And through regulation that has been made already in the last century in Italy, and also the sustainability changement, today, those rivers are completely clean. You can even fish inside. It's beautiful nature. So, and luckily, this is a great improvement for we know that this is not happen for all the textile industries, unfortunately, because there is some regulation in other countries are still many different, and there are still a lot of pollution.
Thank you, Silvio. Jeanne, take it away.
Yes, hi. I'm Jeanne Carver, and I'm from Oregon. We ranch in the high desert. It's considered Oregon's outback, east of the Cascade Mountains, where we see very little rainfall. On the ranch that I am, this is our 153rd year of continuous operation. So it began as a small homestead claim by a young man who was born in an ox cart on the Oregon Trail. It's that story, and many of you may have family or friends who can tell that similar story. But that ranch has been providing food and fiber, as many farmers and ranchers like the folks we saw in Australia just a few minutes ago. That's what we do. And so our relationship with the land, I believe you talked, how has it changed? In the late 1980s, we were aware that we had really looked at the land as a land of plenty. And as a whole community, we had been utilizing that bounty for our own survival. This is what we do all around the world. So everything we need to be alive comes from the land, you know? And it's been that way, and it will continue to be that way. So in the late 80s, we saw some pretty good indicators that things weren't looking so good for the future. One important indicator we saw working with our local agencies was that only 2 salmon came home to spawn in 1990 in a creek that was a historic fisheries. And when you see that, because we live every day on the land, my feet are in the dirt every day. So weather matters, natural resources are our life. We don't talk about sustainability as how do you fit it in. It's actually a complete way of life. Because if we don't make the right decisions and nurture these interconnected relationships, then we are all doomed, right? So with that 2 salmon returning home, it was a huge wake-up call. The first thing you think is, what have we done to contribute to this? And you become personally responsible. And so it began a journey for us that we had completed a conservation management plan for our entire operation by 1989. And we began implementing that, wondering, could we make a difference in our lifetime? Because we're the birthplace of that creek. 2 creeks are born on our ranch, and we're the stewards of the first 15 miles, the origin of a creek. Imagine, the origin of rivers, the beginning of life for those salmon, because they come home and spawn on our ranch and then die. That's the life cycle of the fish. If you don't know that, really quickly, they're born from these eggs, and the little fish begin their journey down that little creek into the bigger creek and the bigger creek and into the Deschutes River, out to the Columbia and into the Pacific Ocean to live their life. And then, miracle of miracles, they know before they die they must go home. And so they find the mouth of the Columbia, against all odds, too, by the way, commercial fishing, predators, all the challenges the fish have, and many other things. They come up the Columbia, they find the mouth of the Deschutes River, up the river, the mouth of Buck Hollow Creek, and up Buck Hollow Creek to our ranch to spawn and die. Could we make a difference in our lifetime? Well, I'm happy to say that by 2010, just 20 years later, we had thousands of salmon coming home. And that's our greatest story to tell. And the biggest change for us with the land is it used to be just us. It was our story. It was our work. But then when we faced new challenges we'll get to later, and we could no longer sell wool, and we found a new way to do that, it all of a sudden started connecting everybody who bought the wool and spun the wool and wove the wool or knit the wool and bought the product. You became part of our story. You became part of that connection. So today, it's not a story of a rancher and a farmer alone. It's a story of our collective work from the supply chain all the way to the consumer to make a difference. So today, our work on the land involves a lot bigger family.
Wow. We'll be talking all about a lot more of that later, but wow. You know, I'm going to answer the question. I'm Wendy Waugh, Senior Vice President of Sustainability here at Theory, but I just want to jump into my relationship with the land. As I was thinking about this question, you know, I was in fashion, you know, my whole entire career. I never thought that I would be discussing land, discussing animals, discussing, you know, soil, talking to farmers. It was like, we're going to make clothes. You know, that's what we do. Make clothes. Oh, how nice, right? And the more I became educated, the more I learned, the more I got involved in the supply chain, I realized how important you all are to me personally. You know, I can't tell you how important they are to me. The more I think about it, the more it's like I want everyone to know. Jeanne and Silvio and Michael and Angela, and there's more. I want everyone to know, and I want you all to know what they do and why. And then I realized, oh, you know what? Your father grew up on a farm in Kansas. And it's like, Wendy, I can't believe I never talked to him about that, because I wasn't interested in farming. It's like I missed an opportunity to really talk to my father about how he grew up. I really wish he was still here so I could ask him lots of questions. Because it's because of what you do in the farms that you are the ones, how did I put this? You're important to the well-being of all life, that's where, as Jeanne just said, that's where it starts. So this is critically important for us to really understand and get to know. And so when you talk about traceability, that's really, we need to know. And we need to, you know, help make all of this visible to everybody.
Wow. Thank you so much, Wendy. And I think this was really important to start off this conversation because you're representing a supplier, a material, a company. But at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're representing these companies. And these are all very relational. Instead, Jeanne, you were saying it shifted from a transactional relationship to a relational relationship. So who here is representing a brand or a company today? Okay, so a good amount of you guys. I think we're at such an interesting crossroads in the fashion industry right now where we're trying to understand how to balance environmental responsibility and sustainability with profit, right? That's always like the egg or the chicken? What comes first in order to do what? So I want to go down the line and maybe in just one sentence, as a supplier, as a materials farmers, as a company, where do you think the state of the fashion industry is and how can we balance this structure? Wendy, let's actually start with you.
Okay. I think we're at the state of learning that things need to change. I think there are some companies who've been doing this for quite a while, but I think the industry itself we need to change. The question is how, and I look at this as a huge time of opportunity and innovation. And it's going to be hard, and it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be, I can't do it, it's not done that way, and all the reasons why not, and considerations, et cetera, but I think we can all work through that.
Thank you. Jeanne, as a materials farmer, yes, the state of the fashion industry. Super simple.
Rephrase it one more time. Rephrase the question one more time.
From your perspective, as a materials farmer from Chanticle Wool Company, how do you think where are we in the state of the fashion industry? And how do we balance environmental responsibility with profitability?
Thank you. So all of us around the world used to work in local and regional supply systems for survival, our food and our clothing and our shelter. And as we evolved and populated and grew, we became specialized and separated. And so we went through this massive shift. And what we have to do today is we have to find a way to recapture the important things that we had then that sustained us. We have to find a way to return to those now that we've become very specialized and very skilled and very separated. So we need to find those good things and work them back in. So the importance here is we've now got this huge ship that's really hard to turn. And everything is disconnected. But we have to invest. We have to invest in the environment. We absolutely have to, there's no question. Because there's more to this than simply profits. So we have to make the shift from purely profit-driven and put more purpose back in there. Because in the long term, short-term profits aren't going to mean much.
Thank you. Silvio, from the perspective of a supplier.
Yes, I think, the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industry in the world because I think it's second or third after the oil of the electric industry. So there are a lot of emission, I think 10%, water wastage, more than 20%. So, and then we have this fast fashion that is growing very fast. And probably in the last 20 years has multiplied the garments that are in the planet. Unfortunately, fast fashion has very good business, but using this low quality, we can say, or synthetic material that don't degrade. And also during the washing, they leave microfiber. They can create more pollution, additional pollution. So to do this, what we can do is very difficult because from our point of view, we are very small in this big market. We should, as everybody, but I think brands, they have more power to educate more than consumer because consumers should buy less quantity probably and better. This is the idea. I think this is the idea of Vivienne Westwood, they say many, many years ago. And so we need also work with the designer because from the impact of a product is, I think 80% is coming from the designer decision, which material they take and what kind of quality they use. So we are very interconnected. So as Wendy already said, we need to work together and to find solutions that are more sustainable. But in this world, the consumer is the one that has first to change a little bit the mentality, I think.
Thank you. It seems like from these answers that it's not one or the other. Like first you have profitability, then you have environmental sustainability. They go hand in hand now. And as Jeanne said, short-term profits don't matter if we don't have soil, land, natural materials to continue. Jeanne, I want to go back to the wool supply chain that you were talking about. It's very complex, and I think it's been intentionally complex, and that has been the status quo. So can you explain what does the current wool supply chain looks like for most brands?
Well, wool starts at the farm gate, so you have producers of wool fibers, and typically around the world, those fibers are sold at auctions. And so that's where we start the separation, okay? And the next people that take an important role are wool traders, because they are putting that wool, then moving it into the next steps, right? That wool is eventually going to be sold to a scouring and top making mill. So there's the next step, and from there it's going to go off to a spinner primarily. There can be some exceptions in this, and from the spinning, it's going to go on to weaving and fabric making or knitting. These are very simple, logical steps, right? From there, it goes to cut and sew, and all the way along that, there's a separation for the grower. We're at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. I didn't know until I started my direct marketing efforts 25 years ago. I don't know when this will come up in the story, or maybe it won't, but we didn't think about these things. We sold wool as a commodity by the pound, and you worked to get the best price you could, but the rancher and the farmer are price takers, not price makers. We don't set the price. We take what we're given. So truly, your hand is out every year after shearing. What will you give me for this incredible, renewable, incredible miracle fiber? That actually, wool has been the core of our textiles longer than, for 10,000 years. Everybody knows that. It's truly a miracle fiber. It's the original performance fiber. And as we went away from that more and more, it's wonderful to see brands coming back. The creator put that fiber here for a reason. And it's pretty hard for us to be better than that, right? So that's how complicated it is, and everybody down the stream from us is pushing you on price. And every step that takes that wool is they got to sell it through to the next step, and they all add a margin on. So it's very, very difficult to return much value to the farmer and rancher, where the value story begins that you have to tell when you put these beautiful garments in the marketplace. This is a long way from the farm gate.
And Jeanne, there's this conception that American wool does not exist. Why do you think that has been left out? American wool.
That is true. It doesn't, it's invisible.
Right. Why do you think that has been left out from fashion industries, America's fashion industry's growth?
Well, a modern fashion industry, today's fashion industry. So historically, textiles were an industry and clothing that built this country, since we're here in America. I can only speak for America in my experience, but very, very important. But throughout time, labor prices have changed the location of where we make things. And we've seen it move and shift multiple times in our history, our short history. And the most recent really began in earnest in the 80s. And there are people in this room that could speak to this better than me, but I can only share my experience and what I've observed. But that shift in manufacturing began in the 80s and went hard into the 90s. Today, we have less than 10% of the infrastructure to manufacture textiles and clothing that we once had. And in parallel, we lost, so as that went, so paralleled the sheep industry. Between 1996 and 2000 alone, in that 4-year period, 26,000 sheep producers in the U.S. went out of the sheep business. You couldn't get anything for the harvest, and nobody wanted to buy it. That's why I went down the road I did in 1999. We had been selling our wool to the same company I shared with Silvio earlier this morning. For 100 years, they bought our wool. We knew where our wool went. We could buy the product. We had a relationship. And all that changed as everyone moved around the globe. That's one of the side effects, and not a good one. There's been a lot of collateral damage to this massive shift. And you know, it's like farming and ranching. You don't always know the results of decisions you make and practices that you implement on the ground. You don't always know what the results of your decision are for for years, until all of a sudden you begin to see. So the shift in manufacturing caused a parallel decline in the sheep industry, and when you lose a critical volume, all of a sudden people stop thinking about you, and you become relatively unimportant in the big picture.
Thank you, Jeanne. So just to set the record straight, American Wool exists. It's very much here live. She's wearing a dress from there now. We'll get into that later. But Silvio, let's go into the supplier side, because you are one of the earliest adopters. I think you're a supplier. You earned cradle to cradle very early on, perhaps one of the first. Explain what cradle to cradle as a supplier means, and why was that so important to embed those principles?
First, I have to say, we choose cradle to cradle because we believe in sustainability. Sustainability is not something you can choose, but is more a duty, I think, today, because we are living in a planet that, as I said before, the material and the resources are limited. So we need to take care of this. And because this is not happening, because we are using more resource than the planet can regenerate every year. So this is a big problem. Cradle to cradle, we decide when we start the first collection in 2016, we did a collection called Naturalist Fibra, made only by natural, biodegradable, renewable fiber that was mainly wool, cashmere, and silk. And we certify this group of yarn, knitting yarn, in cradle to cradle. Why we believe cradle to cradle is a little different certification from the other. It's more comprehensive and also forward thinking, because analyze all the supply chain at every step, at every level, and also help you to reduce the wastage, because it's one of the idea of cradle to cradle. Even if you have some wastage into the production, you can reuse and utilize, made new product. For example, from the wastage we did in cashmere, in wool, through the spinning, we create a collection called Green that using 51% of recycle with 49 original that is GRS certified. So this is very important. Then cradle to cradle make an evaluation through 5 different categories. No? One is the material health, so ensuring the material is okay with for the animal, for the people, for the environment. The second is the product circularity. Product circularity means you need to reuse or recycle the product you are doing. So we know from the a study that has been done just last month in Italy that wool can be recycled until 6 times. That is very important data. And then...
Sorry, it could be recycled for 6 times? That's incredible. I didn't even know that.
Until 6 times you can
Didn't know that
recreate it
either.
again.
Did you know that, Wendy?
Yeah. No, I didn't know that either.
This is a study I just got last month in Italy, so from some company. So it seems quite interesting, this. And talking cradle to cradle, then we have the third, that is the water and soil stewardship. So we need to take care of the water, try to reduce the use of it, because until now, most of the company in Italy, because the water, you don't pay for the water like you pay instead for the energy. So they use much more than what they need. So this is an important point to reduce, and we are already starting to do this. Another point is about the renewable fiber. You should use as much as renewable fiber as you can. To get certified cradle to cradle, you need to reach at least 50% of the renewable fiber in your production. And today, Botto Giuseppe is 85%. And the last point is about the social fairness. So social fairness is about the people working in the company. To have, of course, in Italy, we have a good legislation with fair salary. And also the people, the community working in the area across the company, because you need to interact with them. For example, we have the school, we give some open days to let the student to come to see the company, and also we give a prize to the best student. So this is another important point. So all the evaluation of those 5 categories, they give you a level from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And Botto Giuseppe, in all the categories, got the level gold, included the one used by the Regal wool, that is the wool that is important.
Thank you, Silvio. I just learned so much from that. So that's incredible. Wendy, you having a direct relationship with farmers is actually an outlier. Most brands do not have a direct relationship with their raw materials source. So what makes it so complicated for brands to directly communicate where their materials are coming from, and why is traceability from a raw materials so important?
Lots to say about this. First of all, traceability is important because if a brand is gonna be responsible for our impact, we have to know where everything comes from. Kind of makes sense, right? And as Silvio was talking about the impact of the fashion industry, 67% of that impact comes from raw material, the raw material source, and also from the manufacturing of the fabric and the fiber. So that's a huge section. And I'm not even talking about the garment making. Garment making is the sewing, and the knitting is the smaller portion to that. So in order for us to look at our CO2 reductions or our GHG emissions, et cetera, and we have to know what our supply chain is. Now, as Jeanne was talking about the way the industry's been structured, it's really challenging to do that. It's really hard, because we've gone to a number of mills we work with, this is how we used to do things, and still to some degree. And the auction, there'll be lots of farms bringing their fiber, and we don't really know what PO is going to which farm. We don't, because of the way it's been structured. We've been fortunate in the sense that the way we developed the business was really developing relationships with our tier 2 suppliers from the very beginning. If any of you were here for the flax conversation, you saw our flax supplier. So that's really been very important to us. So because of those relationships, we've been able to work with our core suppliers and talk about, where does this come from? And we started the conversation with mills and farmers back in 2017, and it's slowly grown, not quickly, but slowly. And now, as I said, the more that I've learned about this, the more I am passionate, as Michael's used that word, Jeanne's used that word. We're passionate about us knowing who's in our supply chain so that we can work together. And it's the collaboration and it's the working together where I think brands will have an opportunity to plan a business differently, plan how we do things longer period of time, which would be beneficial not just to the brand, not just to the mill, but also to the farmer and everybody else in the supply chain. So everybody in the supply chain is critically important, and the first thing we have to do is know who they are. Jeanne and I were talking earlier, and she used the word invisible. She used it when she was talking here earlier too. It's like, and I thought, oh, you're right. This level of the supply chain's been invisible, and it's just, it really caught me. That word really caught me, and it's just not acceptable to have invisibility here. So, anyway.
Yes, and I think it's been systemically designed that they have been nameless, and it's incredible to have panels like this to bring them to the forefront. So Jeanne, I want to go back to, so your Imperial Ranch was the first RWS certified farm in the world, responsible wool standard. What did that look like? And then how did Shanicle Wool Company start in 2018, and why was it important to regenerate the land as well?
Well, farmers and ranchers are pretty good problem solvers, and we're very logical, and mostly we keep our focus on the work right in front of us. And so here we were ranching, and natural resources, the health of those was the #1 focus of our ranching operation, because that ensures your future. And let me just say this about the business case. The healthier your land, the healthier natural resources, the healthier your harvest. And the healthier your harvest, the healthier your bottom line. And so that guided us. And then we lost the market in 99, and my husband said, find a new way or sheep will be gone. And I went down that road. And for about 13 years, I worked my heart out, not knowing if anyone would buy anything. Sorry. It was a hard journey. And I was not following the normal path of most farmers and ranchers either. But I just kept working and finding people as close to possible to convert it, and got products and put them out there. And I attached, because I'm not a merchandiser, I'm not a marketing person, I'm not a brand person, I'm not a communications, I'm not anything really. I was a ranch wife, okay? And a hardworking, and you do all the things that the men don't do, or the kids, right? So that's really, you're a worker bee. But what happened was I instinctively paired the product with our deep heritage and our work on the land, and it resonated with authenticity. And it was successful, and it carried us forward. And eventually, you know, if only somebody would come down this dirt road that could see who we are and what we do and why it matters, it can make all the difference. The people in this room that are in brands, you have the power to influence. Nobody was hearing my voice from the desert, right? And so it was 13 years that somebody did find us and then bought our wool in a bigger way at scale, and then told our story and made us visible. It was the brands that made us, and it changed our life. And so when they put us front and center, all of a sudden others came. One of those had a problem in their wool supply, an animal issue. And they were part of the building of, they were one of the brands, leading brands, driving the building of the Responsible Wool Standard. And they wanted to build a supply chain with us, and they said, but we need you to be third-party audited for your land care and your animal welfare. In 2020, 4 years into the standard, the Responsible Wool Standard, they added the social welfare third component. So it was actually a brand that said to us, we'll buy your wool, but we need you to do this. Well, the only reason that I embraced that as a farmer and a rancher was because of the journey I'd been on, face-to-face with the people buying what we were delivering and answering the questions, talking to people, being in relationship with them, and knowing that sometimes people are very removed from our life. And it was those conversations that changed our perspective, changed your perspective. We learn from each other. As soon as you start talking, you start learning things you hadn't thought of. You know, yeah, you're going to get an ag lesson. You know, you didn't know that as a fashion person. But it's important. And so it was the request that we went down that road, and we looked at it as an opportunity to showcase great practices. I looked at it as a way for America to remain competitive, because there were people all around the world working on this. If we don't stay in the game, we're not going to compete if we don't stay in the game. And so we went down the road of RWS.
Thank you, Jeanne. Can we give a huge round of applause for Jeanne? And so, Jeanne, you said farmers and ranchers are great problem solvers. You guys are also so resilient and so adaptable, changing season to season, something that, you know, fashion industries and supply chains, we haven't been allowed to change that fast, but you guys change in the moment's instance. And please never apologize for being emotional about this journey, because what we're doing is very uncomfortable. It's different from what we've been doing. This is why it's a systemic supply chain, and it's an emotional connection we have to land, and that's what we all should be doing. So Silvio, I want to talk about how, you know, the conventional route of buying fibers is through auction. Suppliers usually go to auction to buy fibers. Why was it important to go directly to the farmers? And what did the other suppliers say? Were they jealous?
The idea is that always been that there is no sustainability without traceability and transparency in our kind of business. So Botto Giuseppe has a vertical integrated production that going from combing spinning, weaving, dyeing, and finishing. But the part that was missing was the material, the farm level. So we decided in 2016 to go to Australia, where the best finer farm for us were located, to look for the good partner for this. And we were quite lucky because in 2016 we met Michael and Angela, and we start a relation that is already 8-9 years going on, and has been quite successful. The farm, I would say, is a very good farm because using regenerative agriculture practice like rotational grazing, so moving the sheep every few days from one area to another one to reduce the impact. Also, they have cover cropping. They do water management, connecting all the paddock to have always fresh water for the sheep, because this, during some months in Australia, can be very big drought. So it's very important to have continuously water. So this was a great solution. And after this, because we believe the family of Michael, that is a family that owns the farm, like the family of Jeanne, since 4 or 5 generations, they are very passionate, no? They are into this. And they were very happy to understand that through this system, they could finally know where the wool is going from. Because in most of the farm, they sell the wool in the auction, but the wool can go everywhere, and they don't know even which kind of fabric, which kind of yarn, which kind of product.
They were happy to see the sweater that I brought, right? When we went there, we showed them the actual sweater, and they had never seen it, so they were so excited.
So they were very, very happy to know this, because it's important for them, because after the work they do all the year, finally they could touch the result. We sent to them the fabric for their making some clothes, for the wedding of the daughter, so it's very important for them, this kind of contact and like this. So this part was quite successful. After this, we decided to find more farm. So we went to, always in Australia, in Victoria, we found Woodside, another farm owned by the family Crawford since 4 generations. In New South Wales, another 2 farms, Benangaroo and Cavan. Benangaroo is owned by Michael Field family, and Cavan by Rupert Murdoch. It's a very specific farm, this, because it's one of the most historical farms in Australia, because it was owned by a pioneer of Australian wool called Mr. Riley, that import the wool, the fleece, the wool from Spain, from the King of Spain, that at the time was considered the finest in the world. And the breeding with the Australian sheep that they have, he started a genetic group that became very, very super fine. And last farm that is not least but important, because it's the Malahite that is in Tasmania, is the farm where the sleek flannel is coming from.
Which is the sleek flannel skirt that that you're wearing now, Sophia.
So we got all these 5 farms, big farm, all RWS certified, but somebody probably will ask me, why you do all this and you just follow the RWS system that is, anyway, is a chain of custody, and you can know exactly. Because RWS is a good system, you have a good traceability, but not full traceability, because in the lot of RWS, there are many, many farms. And most of the farms, they are not located in the same region and not in the same country most of the time. So it's like more a retraceability than a traceability for us. So to get a farm is very important. And this situation with the farm is a win-win situation, because we can say from one side we have the full traceability, and the farm get a price that is much higher than the market price, because we always recognize a premium to that. So this is very important.
Thank you so much, Silvio. And thank you truly for being such an early adopter of this. And Wendy, I could see why it's called Regal Wool. I feel very regal in it. Wendy, Jeanne just talked about as well how one brand, that's what it took to really shift her entire land and ranch around to start Jeanne & Co. Wool Company. What else can brands be doing to be supporting farms and mills at that level?
I think it's exactly that, which is you need to understand the supply chain. So we need to develop the relationships and determine what that supply chain looks like. So this is the mill, we're working with Silvio, the mill, who are the other people, who's the farm we're working with. I mean, that's really what's going to shift all this. And so it's our intention and our responsibility, I think, for us to really understand more about the supply chain and shift how we're doing things. I mean, this is, as I said, this is a perfect time for innovation. This is a perfect time for coming up with new ways of doing things. And I'll never forget going to a textile exchange conference in DC years ago, and the CFO of Prana was on the stage, and they were talking about, he was basically saying, my people came to me and they're saying we can't have these things be sustainable because we can't, it's not affordable and we can't figure out a way. And he said, okay, now find the way. So it's a matter now, and they did. They did. So how did they do it? I'm not really sure how they did it. He didn't say how. However, it puts a question in everybody's mind about how can we do this. From my perspective, we need to understand the entire supply chain and say, for this fabric or for this product, it's going to be this is the supply chain. And how do we make sure that that is a financially a workable one for everybody along the line? We have to obviously have it be financially affordable for everyone because, don't forget, the brands have to also, sustain our own lives and all the people who are in our supply chain. So when I look at sustainability as a holistic conversation. And that's why we have to have everybody part of the conversation.
So it's incredible because when you say innovation, I'm like, yes, we need innovation. But I know for some other executives, when you say innovation, they're like dollar signs, like that is a financial cost. And so how do brands handle these costs over an extended period of time? Because we're talking about changing a supply chain that's existed for decades.
This is the challenge. Really, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, this is how you do it. Because to tell you the truth, we're looking at different ways ourselves because I can't sit here and tell you how. I think relationships are critically important. How can we maybe plan the business out over a period of time and have it really, work for everyone along the supply chain? How do we want to buy it? Maybe we do that differently. I don't have an answer yet, and I think this is where everybody needs to really brainstorm. And we're doing that now. We're in the process.
Jeanne, it looks like you have an answer. You gave me a look.
You have to make a business case for it. I think you have to make a business case, and I'm watching all the time, as we all are. We're learning. So, we got certified, the RWS, and then I could see this growing around the world, and I said, I'm not going to come to a brand and say, hey, we could build a supply in America for you if you would buy it. You had to just build it and hope they would come. And so that is why I started Jeanne & Co. Wool, was to scale the amount of certified wool being produced in the U.S. So what's next? All right. There's a lot of concern about the environmental, ecosystem health and climate. We all know that. It's at top of mind for everyone. And I was challenged by a brand in 2019 whether or not we were creating destructive impacts to the earth in raising animal livestock. It has a very poor reputation. So how am I going to show what I know was happening on the ground? Our observations, the species counts, yield data changing, agency testimony, now annual audits to a very 275 criteria at the farm gate to check, be audited against for the RWS standard. And I'm also certified to Nativa Regenerative. There's about 260 for that standard. A lot of parallel. So I didn't have a good answer, but I had a vision that we needed to know what were the impacts of our farming and ranching operations, and I didn't know if we could calculate it. So I started asking around. I found a science team that could do it. I found Dr. John Talbot at Oregon State University to kick to the chase here. We've had 5 PhDs on this. We're in year 5 of our data collection on all 10 ranches, 2.6 million acres in the American West. With that data in, I can tell you that, and I asked John 5 years ago, I said, John, will there ever be an economic value to an environmental deliverable? Is that possible? What if we're delivering food and fiber to keep humans alive, and at the same time, we're doing it in a way that delivers a net positive response to nature? What if? He said, absolutely there will, Jeannie. Just, there will. So I didn't know what would happen when we measured. I didn't know what the data would tell us. It might tell us we were doing a really terrible job, you know? But I didn't think so because of all those other things we already had. But they weren't good enough for a brand. They didn't answer the question. So today there's truly a business case. We're at the leading edge of it. Our ranch is in year 3 of an ecosystem services contract and capture this vision. Brands who are serious about moving the needle on their corporate footprint, reducing emissions. You already mentioned how much of those come at the raw material level. What if we are engaged in measured, verifiable science that creates a value that now is a business case for you to invest in this fiber supply that's delivering it in a way that's positive environmentally. And also, by the way, you can make an inset investment to reduce your emissions as you consume this particular fiber. So to me, that's how we're making a business case for doing business together and shifting the needle on our environmental responsibility.
This is why, you know, brands need to have an understanding of all the people in their supply chain. To work with them to try and have an understanding of this. As I said before, our impact, enormous amount of it comes from the farm and the mill level. So if we don't know this, we're not doing.
And we intend to deliver more than fiber. We intend to be the best partner we can be. And that relationship that you have with your grower groups around the world, it's made you stronger. It makes them stronger. It's how we all get stronger. It's made you stronger. So collaboration, communication, we're all in this together. Even collaboration across brands to move things at scale is a really important place to be putting efforts.
Yes.
So we want to be a partner in helping reduce your emissions.
I know.
And bank carbon.
I know.
Wendy's like, why do you think you're here? Why do you think we're
Exactly.
working together? Hello. So Jeanne, it's actually really incredible because you have 5 years of measurements already. And so that is already a case study that this is not just like this hypothetical thing that we should be doing. We have the data, we have the information. We started talking about the complexities of the wool supply chain, why it's so non-transparent, and how these two companies who are both, you know, Shanicle Wool Company and Botto Giuseppe, they're thriving, profitable companies who have broken this current supply chain, changing it into a transparent supply chain. So my last question for the panelists, and Wendy, we'll start with you because well-managed grazing, it improves everything, improves soil, biodiversity, water retention. What else can we be doing as consumers, brands, executives, to make sure that we're taking care of our land? How do we?
It comes back to what I've been saying. It's first of all, we need to know who they are, who the people are, so that we can actually, I mean, when we went to Australia, a lot of what we did was really talk to, you know, Michael and Angela, and actually we got a lot of information when we went to see Jeannie's farm in last year.
And pie.
What?
And pie. Homemade pie.
And lasagna. She made us an incredible lunch, by the way. It was really amazing.
The next panel will be on Jeanne's farm.
I'm too far from town to get anybody to make it. You got to make it yourself.
Not to mention an absolutely gorgeous area. I was just in love with being there for everything about it. Oh, right. Anyway, I think it's really important for us to know what what is happening at the farm level. And a lot of the farmers that I met, I mean, there was other ones that we haven't talked about today. You know, they are actually taking sections of their land and letting it come back to its natural state, in addition to still having space for the 40,000 sheep that are grazing. So it's like, what can we do? Well, you know, like we can continue to support by having the supply chain set up so that we're doing business with those farmers and with those mills. And the more we do that, then the easier it is for them to also, and for us to collaborate in terms of how we can have them maybe do other things on their farm. And there are other opportunities out there. There's other organizations that are working with farmers to try and how do they put their paddocks together? Are they this size or this size, which is better for the environment? And that's one thing to do. There's other organizations out there also that we can then start to collaborate with, not just us, but people who know how to reduce carbon, people who know how to make some changes on the farm level. It comes back to who we are working with, and also it's really important, you know, here we are, to tie this into the product that we're making. You know, it's like we're making this sweater, and it's tied to, you know, the mill and the farmer. So it's like, so the way I look at it specifically as the supply chain and the product that we're producing for the customer. And I consider that a serving of the customer. It's like we're giving to the customer a really high quality product that really has purpose, not just for them wearing.
Thank you, Wendy. And if you're representing a brand here today and you're like, I don't even know where to start to have that connection or relationship.
Start with, I mean, whatever you are, whoever you're working with for getting your fabric, start there. What we did was we developed the relationships with our fabric supplier. And if it's a factory, then talk to the factory. Ask lots and lots and lots of questions. People are going to say, well, I can't get you that answer, or that's not the way we do things. And then you say, thank you very much. Now let's find out how we can get that information. Don't take no for an answer. Really important, because don't forget, you're changing things. And you're not going to change things if people are going to tell you no and you go, okay, you can't. You got to say, I understand that's difficult and I know this is different. Let's just find a way.
Perfect. Wendy, thank you, Wendy. Silvio, in one sentence, because then we're going to go into Q&A, one sentence from the supplier side, what can we demand more from the fashion industry at large?
It's very difficult because to reduce the impact at the product level needs at every step of the supply chain to make big investment, I think. The investment today, they're for us, but not only for us, I think for all the supply chain.
Financial investments.
Also the financial investment at the level of the supply chain, even the pharma, because after we check last year that the life cycle assessment, 90% of the CO2 emissions are at the level of the farm. So to do this, you need to invest in the farm. The farm cannot do by themselves because they will never do, even in a market where the price of the wool today is at the lowest. So also from us, from our point of view, when we see everything we can do at the level of the people, at the level of the machinery, environment, there are a lot of investment we can do, but you need to create a business plan that is financial. This is very important, to create a financial business plan and to have a support of the supply chain.
Okay, financial investments, and you said 90% of the emissions come from the materials level of carbon emissions.
Carbon emissions.
90%. Jeanne, in one sentence, from the materials farmer side, you hold 90% of those emissions. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that can be true, but we've got a lot of data that shows that you can produce wool fiber and manage landscapes in a way that is reducing that. We have half of the ranches fully evaluated with at least 3 years of data, and every one of those operations, so this is just under 1 million acres, and a lot of sheep and a lot of wool production. And every one of these ranches is a net carbon sink with a net greenhouse gas emissions value that's below zero. And those 5 ranches last year avoided 75,000 tons of additional CO2 equivalents. That's ranching and cleaning the atmosphere. That's not ranching and putting methane in. So you can tend these interconnected natural relationships in a way that's positive for nature. And in fact, well-managed grazing, we're actually flipping the script. So we have ranchers in our group now that are being paid to graze for a variety of values people don't think. We're reducing fire fuels, wildland fire fuels around urban sectors. We're grazing crop residue for other farmers so they don't have to treat it with chemicals or burn it. So, you know, we're grazing under solar and renewable energy installations. So there are so many positive, grazing animals were put on the planet for a purpose by someone smarter than we will ever be. And the more we have left wool and reduced the volume it produced in the world or moved from natural fibers, we have started to take those grazing animals off the landscape. This is around the world, and that is a direct connection to the health of plant communities.
Thank
So
you.
if we want the planet to be clean, we have to have what was naturally intended, which is well-managed grazing.
Thank you, Jeanine. Wendy, last thoughts.
And this is why we need to talk to each other. We need to talk to each other so we can learn from each other, and we can find out what we can all do together to try and make this even better. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and I just want to tie this all up, and then we'll have time for 2 questions, is that we're really churning a very linear supply chain or top-down supply chain, very hierarchical, where all the power remains in the brands, where why would that be when the farmers, the suppliers, they are the stewards of the land. So we're really, that's turning into a circular supply chain. We have time for 2 questions. Yes, in the front. Yes, wait, do we have microphones maybe? Or here. Here.
Thanks. My question's for both Silvio and Wendy, who would ever choose to answer. We're having these conversations at a brand level around sustainability. It's a lot of times coming from a rhetoric that seems limiting from a product perspective. You know, our designers are really struggling to understand how sustainability is benefiting them. Could you give your thoughts on how traceability in the supply chain can actually lead to product innovation and make better products at a design level?
So I can't wait to say something. So, you know, it's really been fascinating, I have to say. As we've been doing this deep dive into the traceability of on our signature fabrics, we have been meeting people along the way and seeing some innovation that's happening that we could now start to talk about or maybe put in some of our product. But if we hadn't done this, we wouldn't have known that. We wouldn't have met them. We wouldn't have known that this was going on. So it gives us an opportunity to learn more and to find out what else is out there.
Silvio, do you have?
I think traceability is fundamental because for the future, we will have a changement in the legislation. So in France, we already got the AJAC law that is for the traceability, and there is coming the digital passport, product passport, that will be asking the brands to evaluate all their impacts. The main impacts, I think, will be CO2 emission, energy, and water. So it's fundamental to work on the supply chain to have then this digital passport, because the customer, the consumer, will have the possibility to get to buy the product with informed choice. So it's very important.
Thank you, Silvio. And we'll go to Dana, and then, yeah, we'll go to you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I guess my question, Jeannie, is really to you, and the work that you've been doing is so inspirational and so needed, but the challenge that we're seeing on the brand side is the supply chain here in the US. So you're creating all of this amazing fiber here, and is there an ability to utilize that here domestically?
Yes, well, remember that for 152 years, all of the wool I produced and the growers in my group all stayed here in America. So that is one thing I tried to do in 1999 when we couldn't sell wool and I needed to find a new way, was I tried to work as close to home as possible. Started with regional fiber artisans and the closest mills I could find till they went down. Then I'd go further out. But I've worked within the US, and because of my journey with this, when I started Shanico Wool in 2018, I didn't start it until I went and visited our only top making mill left in America, Chargeurs Wool USA, in Jamestown, South Carolina. I went and saw 3 main spinning mills left, and I said to them, I want to bring this certified wool forward, but you're going to have to keep it separate. There can be no blending. And so because of those conversations, one of the mills was pretty visionary, said, yeah, I think you're onto something. So right now they stock 40 yarns made with Shanico wool. 40 yarns that somebody can get a few cones of to go to development and go to manufacturing and then place production. Same thing with a fabric maker. There's a circular knitter, sliver knitter that has developed an entire wool bar of fabrics, French terry, circular knit jerseys, fleece, whatever. Anyway, now you can go buy 5 yards and develop an idea. So I have really tried to support U.S. manufacturing, but as we know, it's very, very challenging, and brands in the room will know that. It is challenging. Lead times can be long. Prices you're going to get are going to be higher. We still have labor issues. We have a lot against us, but we are not seeing growth in the U.S. textile manufacturing sector that everyone's talking about supporting U.S. made. We're not seeing it we're not seeing at the federal level support for growth in U.S. manufacturing. And then as of this year, I have, for the first time, known that the writing was on the wall. I could just close my doors and be done and be out of business. We were that close 10 months ago because I couldn't move our wool inside the U.S. Not enough consumption of our wool pulling it through. You don't make it. And so I now have an export partner, and so we're still trying to use all the Shanico wool we can in the U.S., and what we can't sell is now going into new friends and new communities for me outside the U.S.
Wendy, did you?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, it's not just about in the United States, it's also about taking the Shanico wool fiber and making it into fabric in Italy in particular and other places. We actually have some of Shanico wool made into a fabric.
Yeah, stand up. Stand up.
And Jared
Full
is wearing.
360.
Ta-da, there he is. I just saw
Full
it this
spin.
morning, just a while ago. And I'm like, that's our
US
wool?
made.
That's fabulous.
So we're in the
Makes sense.
testing process, so we're working on all this. So I think that Shanico wool could be used in lots of places, which I think is really important.
Thank you. We have one question here. Yes.
Thank you. So, first of all, this is an incredible panel, so thank you all for all of your insights. Wendy, this is a question for you and also kind of an idea. I was kind of inspired by what you were saying about wool can be recycled 6 times, and I know that waste wool can actually be used as a mulch and a compost. Does Theory have any circularity take-back initiatives
actually
for their
do.
wool? Is that is there an avenue
actually,
for that
yeah, we
in
do.
agriculture? Okay, cool.
We have a take-back program in our stores, so we take back clothes from our customers. We also take back damages, and this is a separate thing. We refurbish and we donate those. And we do have a lot of sweaters that we're in the process of trying to recycle. However, what I want to say is that in fall of 23, we had a garment in our store that was using the scraps from one of our wool coats that was made in China. We took the scraps, we sent it to Italy, and we made, in addition to the scraps, there were other recycled wools there, but we made a new fabric, and we made a coat. And it's a super cool coat, actually. And now we're working on how we can do more of that. So yes, we are looking to recycle.
I'm a partner in one of those kind of programs too. It's with a major brand. I can't talk about it. That's not my call. But all of their take back is recycled and then blended with some of our Shanico virgin wool and into a new life for that. So we get to be a small part of that repurposed, which is, it's really fun.
From our side, we did a few trial with customer in Europe that they have a wastage in their production, and they send us back their wastage. We take it down to the fiber again, and we blend to get a GRS quality certified. It can be made with wool, it can be made with cashmere. So
When the Theory team came to my ranch, did we go through my textile archives
Yes, we did.
at in the old Hinton house? Yes.
Yes, we did.
So as a non-designer trying to make something out of my wool, so I used it all. I had the shorn wool, which got spun to yarns and went into knits and wovens. I had the market lamb to the restaurants, and I personally brought the skins out, cured them, and then baled them and sent them to be tanned, all within the US. When I got my tanned skins back, because that's the life, you have to honor the life. So I didn't want anything to be wasted. And the skins were being thrown away because the industrial food lobby controls the offal market. And so here were all of our lambs selling into restaurants and being cared for us all the way of their lives. And then that beautiful pelt was being thrown in the garbage. I'm like, we can't do this. So I set up a room in the barn. My husband didn't know about it for a few months, and then he found out. But that's where I was salting the hides and curing them and storing them, and then I went to U.S. tanning. When those pelts came back, I couldn't sell them against the imports. Remember that part of my story? Because I paid more to tan it and ship it than you could go to Costco and buy one, 4 of them put together in a rug for $100. And so I knew I had to add value. So we began clipping the wool off at the ranch. All us ranch wives had new jobs, and cutting and sewing those skins into new products. And then the long wool we cut off of those products was hand carded into handmade into felted fabric by local artisans, which were cut and sewn into new garments. And the shaved, short, choppy wool that came off, I had 3 people making paper, which became the tags for the garments. So see, every piece of that was sunlight. It all started as sunlight energy, captured by plants, converted through photosynthesis to vegetable protein. By the way, while they did that, they cleaned the carbon out of the atmosphere. That vegetable protein was bitten by the animals who converted that form of protein, which can't give us life, but what they convert it to can: sustenance, food, fiber, clothing, and skins are early shelters.
Wow.
And so that's, I don't know where I was.
Yes,
But anyway,
Jeanne.
I used it all.
Jeanne,
I used it all.
I need a reality show. I need like the Real Ranch Housewives of Imperial Farm and Shannon Wool Company.
Call that down and dirty? Is that what you call that?
Down and dirty. We're gonna make this happen. This was Theory's and CFDA's and UN Lifestyle's first foray into these conversations. These conversations are so important because what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring transparency back, and they're trying to change the power dynamics. Like if we talk about it in romantic relationship terms, the supply chain was very toxic and it was very codependent. We're changing it into a healthy relationship, an interdependent relationship, which we all want. We're not making them nameless anymore. We're giving them visible, a seat at the table. So this is so great. Thank you so much. The full conversation will be on CFDA's YouTube. Wendy has office hours. If you're like, I want a whole conversation with Wendy one-on-one, go to her. She has office hours specifically for this. And so just a huge round of applause for our panelists, Wendy, Jeanne, Silvio. And I'm gonna hand it off to Wendy to close us off.
Yes, thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you, Silvio. Thank you, Jeanne. I think this was really a very interesting, inspiring conversation, right? I'm glad that you all think so. So this was our third in a series, and I have to give my huge, deep thanks to the Council of Fashion Designers of America, Stephen and Sarah and Sasha and Elizabeth. You've been incredibly supportive and just absolutely amazing. So It's been a great honor for us to partner with you, to collaborate with you, to work with your vision to create these wonderful talks that I'm hoping you all are walking away with some interesting, important tidbits. And hopefully we're starting to move things in a good direction. I also want to thank the United Nations Fashion and Lifestyle Network for supporting these as well. It's Carrie and Lucia and Megan. And I'm really, really grateful that you all came and stayed and listened. And I'm so grateful to our panelists, and Sophia and Silvio and Jeanne. So thank you very, very, very much. And thank you all for coming. So.